Welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm Representative Gary Harper, and this is my guest tonight is the Honorable Catherine Souza. Kathleen Souza. Jeez. Or Kathy, as I refer to her as. So Kathy and I were freshmen in the legislature tonight, back in 2000, and we served a bunch of terms together. And we sat together, and I didn't I buy you coffee almost every session day?
Courtesy of the speaker.
Well, yeah, I know. It's the speaker's office where we go to get the coffee, but still.
And the speaker was in his chair, and he couldn't leave.
No, he couldn't come catch us stealing his coffee.
We could leave.
Right.
That was fun. There'd be a boring speech, and Gary would say, "Shall we go?"
We're out of there.
So we're out of there, up drinking coffee in the speaker's office, and he was very busy at the well with doing his duties.
Exactly, and we were avoiding being bored to tears. So anyway, I want to get before we get started, we're going to talk about the merger between CMC and Dartmouth Hitchcock.
Correct.
But I want to get your take because you've been in the legislature a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so this past week, I'm sure people have seen it in the news. So far, I think it was 7. I lost track after a bunch. 7 state representatives were sanctioned for not attending a sexual harassment sensitivity training course. So back at the beginning, as soon as the Democrats took office, they wrote a new rule that said everybody must attend this course. I will tell you, I was on the fence of whether I should or shouldn't. The reason I was not going to was that the requirements for me to be a state legislator are clearly delineated in the Constitution. And in that list of things that are required, none of them is sensitivity training.
Right.
So it seemed unconstitutional to add a different reason why, different requirement to be a state legislator.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the Democrats' argument was the House gets to write its own rules.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the way rules are in the Constitution, the rules pertain to dress code. They can make the rules of when the committees meet, when we meet, with the rules that govern the process.
Mm-hmm.
They're not rules as you have to take this course or this course or this course.
Right.
Those aren't the type of rules it refers to in the Constitution. So on constitutional grounds, I was not going to go. But on the other hand, I understood that many voters wouldn't understand, depending on how the media played it,
how they framed it.
The general public would not understand why I didn't go. So my basic feeling was, you can be in a crosswalk and have the right of way, but you're kind of silly if you don't jump out of the way of the Mack truck that's about to hit you.
Mm-hmm.
So I took the course. Well, I didn't take it completely. I got about 3/4 of the way through, and it was a course that if you hate men, you were in heaven, because that's all it did was talk about if a guy does this, if a guy does this, if a guy does this. Every example they gave for the first, I think I don't know what the time frame was. I was there for at least an hour, and every single example they gave was a man doing something to somebody.
So this was discriminatory.
It was. I felt like the sexual harassment sensitivity course was sexual harassment.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I raised my hand and I expressed my opinion that this is all BS because, we're supposed to be working together to try to work these issues out, not vilifying men. And I walked out of the thing. I was on the way out. One of the women that's been around a while gave me a big hug, which goes against the whole thing.
Oh yes.
So I didn't go. So anyway, so I went.
Yeah.
So I got credit for going because I signed in when I went in, but I did not complete it. I thought it was a farce. the course was paid for by your tax dollars, and a bunch of DC, I don't even know what to call them, experts on this came down, got paid by your tax dollars to come down and lecture us on how bad men are. So anyway, this Thursday we had, and I forget how many, there was dozens and dozens of bills that we were supposed to hear Thursday afternoon.
Oh, yes. I heard.
Instead, we heard 6 hours of the Democrats prosecuting the state reps who refused to take the course.
One by one or all
One by
together?
one.
Oh.
Lucy Weber, as a deputy majority leader, got up and accused, for instance, Betsy McKinney. And then she would have an opportunity to get up and defend herself, and then they would vote to sanction her or reprimand.
To Betsy?
To Betsy. So anyway, she was. There was some really good speeches, really, really powerful speeches in people's defense, including Mike Sylvia. But and Kevin Verville did a really good job.
I heard.
Yeah, if you go on YouTube and listen to his defense, you'll understand the issue a lot better. But anyway, the greatest one was Betsy McKinney. Betsy is 18-term state legislator. She was the chairman of Fish and Game when we were freshmen.
Right, exactly.
And we were on her committee, and she's a wonderful person. She's a very sweet lady. I don't think I've ever seen her even mad, right?
And she's older, too. She's not a young kid.
This is what she said. She got up there and said, I am aware that I was supposed to take this the training. I did not take it, and I am not going to take it. I am 80 years old, and if somebody sexually harasses me, I will consider it flattering and ask them to get glasses. Says, if I do any sexual harassment, it will be to my seatmate. And that was Splain got up and raised his hand so everybody knew who she was talking about.
Oh, my. Oh, that's all
So
right.
she mocked the whole process,
Yeah.
which is where what it deserved. But now there's a rumor going around, and like I said, it's just a rumor. Somebody that's connected into the legislature called me and said that some of the Democrats are considering actually removing these legislators from the legislature for their heinous behavior of not going to this propaganda course.
How would they justify that?
I have no idea. But the problem is Democrats have there's an old saying in that the problem with a pure democracy is that eventually the majority realizes they can take anything they want from the minority. So in a pure democracy, the reason we have a republic and not a democracy, in a pure democracy, the majority can just see somebody like Bloomberg and say, hey, we're taking all your money, and there's nothing he can do about it. And he loses his billions of dollars, which wouldn't probably be a horrible thing, but that's why we don't have a democracy.
Right.
But right now in the legislature we do.
But you can't make a penalty that didn't exist. That's after the fact.
They were writing rules as they went. The speaker at one point called by his own declaration, said something was put on the table without even a vote. They were losing their minds. And my problem, the reason I think it's possible, is if you saw the vote last week, you could tell that a lot of the old timers, the Democrats that you and I served with, who wouldn't have been caught dead doing something like this, all just fell in line.
It's amazing how in the Democrats in the legislature,
Some Republicans,
they fall like dominoes.
yeah, and they should know better, because what they should understand is precedent. One of the big things we use for rules in the New Hampshire House is precedent. And if you have a precedent that the majority can force the minority, which is a form of harassment, can force the minority to be required to take a course or training, then that means if the Republicans gain control of the House, wouldn't it automatically be justified for them to force the Democrats to take a firearm training course?
Right.
Or
Or one to respect life, or anything else that.
That's actually the first speaker got up and talked about that.
Really?
Yeah, how his wife had twins, and one of them died during part of the
Birthing process?
no, it was before that. It was like complications, and sat there with that child in his hands as it passed away, and he said that if he was writing rules, he would force them to take sensitivity training as to the actual reality of abortion,
And the value of life.
the
Yes.
value of life, and the actual the reality of abortion, which is
Right.
if they're setting precedent,
They've done it.
they've done it. Now, if they go the next step and start evicting people from the house because they won't do what they're told, then there's no limit. There's no limit as to what the majority can do to the minority. It is harassment. It is they're actually doing what they are complaining about. One of the women, and I'm not going to say who on the show because it's not necessary. One of the women is so easily triggered that after this all went down, she was getting on the elevator and she said the elevator was full of men, and one of them said, "Don't worry, we don't bite." And that made her afraid. That triggered her. And then it got worse, Kathy, because another one says, "Well, maybe we bite a little, or maybe a little."
Oh, gee.
So this was enough. Some of these women are so hypersensitive that they've lost their minds. I can't understand. I mean,
I don't know how we got this far because I was there until last term. I didn't run last term for
Right.
family reasons, but we had a pamphlet we had to sign that we had read on harassment and this type of thing. And I didn't even want to sign it because I thought that was an infringement to have to sign that I had read something.
Yeah, yeah.
But why wasn't that sufficient?
apparently not. They want to force us to believe what they believe now.
That is a
I think
shame.
that's basically what it is.
It's
It's not enough that they tell you what you should believe. Now they want, unless you capitulate, but anyway.
It's bad. It's too bad that more than 6 refused to take it. If 50 or 60 had refused to take it, they might not have gotten away with this.
Yeah,
That's too
I
bad.
can see both sides of it. Like I said,
Yeah.
I did it because it was
It was
part of me also
probably
figured maybe I'd learned.
the practical thing to do, probably.
Well, part of me thought maybe there was something I don't understand or something, but there was nothing that they presented was even remotely enlightening. But anyway, so your accomplice Barbara sent a message to me and said you wanted to come on and talk about the
proposed
the
merger.
proposed link between CMC and Dartmouth Hitchcock.
Yes,
So-
and Barbara was going to be part of this, but she has sort of lost her voice,
Yes.
so that would be difficult. So
Yes.
she's
And she hasn't been in China.
no,
No.
but she's in the next room.
She's in the next room.
So
So
Any-
fill us in. What's going on with this?
okay, this is the 3rd time that there's been an attempt to give away CMC, and I'm saying that purposefully. 20 years ago, there was a merger between CMC and Elliott Hospital.
Correct.
It was called Optima. At that time, the merger was accomplished. CMC was gutted, equipment, people, everything.
Really? I didn't know that
Yes.
part.
And the only thing that saved it was an abortion. Optima represented both hospitals, both philosophies, both missions. And it was leaked to the press that an abortion was being scheduled on the Elliott property, but under the combined name.
Oh.
That was proof positive of what we had been fearing in trying to stop the merger. And so one thing led to another, and the Attorney General ordered both hospitals to find ways, to try to find a way to coexist without violating their missions. And they decided it couldn't be done. And so at that time, they ordered both boards.
Why wouldn't they have just kept doing the abortions up at Elliott instead?
Because it was combined entity, Optima. It was on the Elliott property, but it represented both hospitals.
Okay.
There was no more CMC and no more Elliott. It was Optima, which combined both. So it was violating, it had to violate one or the other's missions.
Right.
And so at that time, the Attorney General ordered them to come up with a special board and make a decision. And they came up with a decision, and they presented to the Attorney General an agreement. And in it, this was 20 years ago, it said, any future affiliation must respect and share a commitment to the preservation of life from the moment of conception to the time of natural death. Any prospective affiliate must share a common commitment to preserve life, refraining from abortions, and it goes on. So 20 years ago, we thought, oh, thank God, our hospital is saved.
Right.
Then 10 years ago, the diocese, in its wisdom, and the leaders of CMC decided to affiliate with Dartmouth. The pro-life people looked into this again, and we said, this is an affiliation, this is an acquisition. And they said, no. So we researched it, and we had a very good leader at the time, Andy Martell. Remember, he was a state senator at one point, and he was the rep at one point. And during the first attempt to merge CMC, he started this group called Save CMC. It was very popular. And during the second attempt, he was around, and we had another Save CMC group. And after many months, the Attorney General agreed with us. He said, this is indeed an acquisition, and it can't go forward. It hadn't been accomplished like the Optima one. No hospital was gutted. They were still doing their thing. And he said, this cannot go on because it's going to change the governance of CMC. It's not an affiliation, it's an acquisition. And it's going to violate the mission of one or the other.
Right.
Because Dartmouth is dedicated to their philosophy, which includes abortion. It includes in vitro fertilization, which involves the destruction of embryos, and other things that are anathema to the Catholic faith.
Well, let me ask you this. My understanding, and I've never checked into this.
Okay.
It was from a nurse that works up in Lebanon. That they're doing a lot of transition surgery.
Oh, they are.
So, how does the Catholic Church and CMC handle the transition?
Well, they don't. They don't do it. But this is you pointed out something else that's different in the mission. So, anyway, for the second attempt 10 years ago, the Attorney General agreed with us and said it's a no-go.
Oh, wait, just a short caveat. So a few years ago,
10.
No, a few years ago, don't remember what the insurance commissioner, I believe it was, went to the Gelcar, Republican-controlled Gelcar at the time.
Okay.
And asked for a rule change to allow Medicare or Medicaid, I don't remember which, to cover transition.
I was there. I listened to that.
And I was shocked.
The head of Health and Human Services, Jeffrey Myers, was there, and he was arguing for that.
And he was lying through his teeth.
To have Medicaid pay for children. To have sex change surgery. Yes, it was horrible.
And every time they pursued it and tried to get how much it's going to cost, he used the amortized, I think, what you'd call it, version of the cost, which
Mhm.
is 1 penny for 1,000 or
Right.
something. He would never actually say
No,
what the
no.
cost of the surgery was.
He's no longer head of Health and Human Services, thank God.
But anyway, once that passed,
Mhm.
my understanding is that the money going into transition surgery and up in Lebanon just went through the roof. They started doing a boatload of those because all of a
They've-
sudden the government's
They
paying
have
for it.
recently hired down here 3 doctors to do transgender stuff.
In what
so-
hospital?
Well, they don't have one yet. This is the
Oh.
plan. So anyway, so 10 years ago we won again. We thought we're safe again. Oh no,
No, no.
3
no.
times they're back. So they're back, and they're calling it again an affiliation. It's not. It's an acquisition again. The paperwork is very extensive. There's almost 100 pages of the combination agreement, which I have here. Then there's almost 100 pages of the joint change of control agreement, which explains the combination agreement. Then there are pages of appendices, which are hundreds of pages. But we have read them, and it's very, very scary. The bottom line is they're going to divide an umbrella hospital. It's going to be called Dartmouth-Hitchcock-Granite 1. It's going to be the new system. And it's going to expand the southern tier of New Hampshire greatly. Right now, they're mostly up north. But they want to come in and take over the practice of medicine in the southern tier. And they have no hospital. They're desperate for a hospital. They want to have a place to have not just their doctors and their specialties, but to train their students. CMC has the hospital. CMC is in the black. They're not in the red. But for whatever reason, CMC has decided that they would be very well merging. However, they both are committed to patients, but they have a different definition of patients. According to Catholic philosophy, an unborn child is a patient. According to the Dartmouth philosophy, an unborn child is something that can be destroyed.
Right.
They have different feelings on the end-of-life care, very different on end-of-life care. And Dartmouth doctors can practice things in Vermont they can't practice in New Hampshire with end-of-life care, right now, anyway. So anyway, there's a group of people that have petitioned the bishop. We have met with Dr. Pepe, the head of CMC, and his lawyers, and we're getting no place. So we're hoping that by raising awareness of the dangers of losing a Catholic hospital on a show like this will help.
Why is the diocese don't they have any say in this?
Oh, they do. The bishop has the absolute say, and he's given his permission. Absolutely, he has given permission. The bishop,
So why would a Catholic bishop give permission to it's like when you see an obvious course,
a
trajectory.
collision course, yes.
You see an obvious
Yes.
trajectory where at CMC it is very likely
Okay.
in it or its near satellite will be performing abortions, transition surgery.
End of life,
and end of-
obnoxious stuff. Okay. We are trying to figure this out.
Is
the
there a lot of
bishop-
money involved in this?
There has to be. The bishop assures everyone in very short letters that everything is just fine, that they've consulted bioethicists and they've consulted medical experts, and it's all fine. However, it's not fine. And we keep raising more and more questions, and we're getting no answers. If you read any of the 100 pages, you see that the governance structure, for one thing, is very bad. There's going to be an umbrella group called Dartmouth-Hitchcock-Granite 1. Granite 1 is CMC plus Monadnock and Higgins. CMC joined with Monadnock and Higgins Hospital some months ago, and it's worked out okay. This is not going to be okay.
Does Monadnock do abortions?
Well, they don't. And when CMC joined Monadnock and Huggins, they made a written agreement that Monadnock and Huggins would not do abortions. However, in the new combination agreement, that is mooted. That doesn't hold anymore. And not only does it not hold for Monadnock Huggins, it holds for nothing except the walls of CMC. Dr. Pepe was in a public hearing down here in Manchester and stated very proudly that abortions will never take place within the walls of CMC. However, Dartmouth-Hitchcock does abortions, and Dartmouth-Hitchcock is reserving the right to do abortions. And it's in this document that although CMC within the walls can never be required to do abortions, it cannot be required to do the in vitro, it cannot be required to destroy embryos, it cannot be required to assist in suicide if that becomes legal within the walls. So what happens? They build more buildings, right?
They just add walls.
They build more buildings. And worse, what if, because CMC can't allow it within their walls, and all the doctors and the residents are Dartmouth, why won't they just move the department out? It's in this agreement that they have the right, the new entity will have the right to remove or add departments.
Right.
And to reallocate assets. So if they just moved the department OBGYN out into another building, it wouldn't be within the walls.
Right.
They would be enabling abortion in the whole southern tier of New Hampshire.
Yep.
And on the physician-assisted suicide, right now you have before your committee, I believe,
Yes, we do.
a physician-assisted suicide bill, okay?
Do you know if the governor usually supports that or rejects it?
I don't think he's going to support that. I don't think your committee is going to either, actually. I hope not.
I don't know. I don't know. My committee's actually pretty good, but they're not. There's a lot of liberals on it too.
Okay. Now, on page 10 of the agreement, it says the system, that's the new group, can never require CMC to engage in direct abortions, destruction of embryos, immoral research, withholding of food or water, or assisted suicide if it becomes legal. However, it goes on to say that these provisions cannot be imposed on any other part of the system. So if physician-assisted suicide becomes legal,
They just do it over a Monadnock.
they could do it any place, but since the patients will be in CMC, that they want to do this or that want to have this, why won't they just move patients to someplace else?
They just roll them across the street.
Right, and the reason we're so afraid of this is because it says they can change the departments around, they can reallocate assets, but there's a special protection for the heart center, that the heart center can never be removed from CMC. But why would they have a carve-out for the heart center unless they could foresee moving other parts out?
Right.
This is really scary. And it's going to have repercussions in the legislature. When I wrote to the bishop a very lengthy letter saying I was afraid that the diocese would lose credibility up there. Right now, not too many legislators care too much when someone from the diocese speaks.
Yeah, but that's not because of that. That's
Not because of this, no.
no.
But they don't have a lot of accommodation when they do come up now, and usually the bishop doesn't come. They send
Yeah, they have it. They have a lobbyist basically.
Bob
for
Dunn's
the
the lobbyist
yeah.
right now.
He's a very nice guy, but
He is.
but I know that there's a huge chasm between how much the archdiocese, how much influence they had in the legislature back in 2000 to now is night and day.
It's diminished. Well,
lot.
The bishop doesn't come up. He sends surrogates. The surrogates sometimes are in 3 committees at once, so they put a paper down and leave it and walk out.
Right.
So they don't even present it. So they have lost a lot of credibility, but I'm afraid they're going to lose a lot more.
You want me to get you some water or something?
No, I'm fine. And I've got some substantiation of why they're losing it right in front of your committee right now.
Go ahead.
In this document, it says they're going to be able to do their research
Right.
in any other building. Do you know who did the clinical trials for the abortion pill under when Greg was governor?
No.
Dartmouth Hitchcock. That's the type of research they will be doing.
Right.
Now, the thing with
Which abortion pill? The RU486?
RE486.
okay.
Yeah, I've got it. I Googled it right here. They're talking about having the residents learn everything at CMC, you know, because they have a medical school up there and they need a hospital. So the residents are coming to CMC. But if you Google the Concord Feminist Health Center, which is now called Equality Health Center, here's what it says. We are an abortion teaching facility for residents of Dartmouth Hitchcock. So they're coming to CMC for their residency, but when it comes to the abortion part, they go to an abortion place, and then they come back. How is this philosophy going to help the Catholic philosophy within the walls of CMC?
Let me ask you this. Under the new merger, is there any protection for doctors that work at CMC to not be required? Because this doesn't, because if there's not some protection for the doctors could be a Catholic doctor who's forced to perform abortions, just not on campus.
I don't know. I didn't see that in there. That's probably in legislation someplace, not in there. But getting back to the legislation, the letter from the bishop tells me that the combination will not undermine the ability of CMC to fulfill its mission or otherwise adversely affect the church's witness. I was afraid of their witnessing being compromised. Well, just recently, here's a picture of Trinity students on the steps of the cathedral.
Yeah.
And they're going to Washington for the March for Life. Turn a few pages.
Which paper is this?
Union Leader.
Okay.
Turn, and here is the press conference on the day that you had 4 pro-life bills. And who's speaking against the 4 pro-life bills? A Dartmouth doctor.
Oh, yeah.
So,
What can I see it?
sure. So here,
There is an OBGYN.
Mm-hmm.
No, not her. There's this one OBGYN doctor that comes up and let me tell you this. Okay, so he comes into my committee, I think it was last term, I don't remember. And I think he's affiliated with Dartmouth, but he's supposed to be like a state OBGYN like expert or part of an association or
I
something.
think I know who you mean.
Arrogant as a day is long. And he was talking about late term abortions.
Mm-hmm.
And he said there are no late term abortions in New Hampshire.
How do we know?
Well, that's what I said. So how do we know? Well, because I would know, because that's my job.
This is
Right.
Jeff.
That's his job. So I said, well, have you ever been to the Manchester abortion clinic? No. Did you ever meet the doctor who performs the abortions to find out what's going on in Manchester? No. Have you ever heard of somebody who asked him, Gosner? What was that horror show down?
Gosnell
Gosnell.
down in Pennsylvania.
Have you ever heard of Gosnell down in Pennsylvania? No. So he is completely unaware of the horrors of like late-term abortion and what horrors there are out there. Apparently hasn't gone to one of the most busy abortion clinics in the state and claims to say with absolution that no, there aren't any late-term abortions. He has no idea.
That's awful.
And so the viewers know, these same people who say there are no late-term abortions happening in New Hampshire, the fact of the matter is those same people are the ones who fight and actually succeed in preventing us from ever keeping any statistics about abortions in New
That was
Hampshire.
my bill for several times.
Right.
Yes,
And-
absolutely.
And so if they're saying it's not happening, why don't they want to shed light
Right.
onto what is happening?
And you know who was very significant in having that bill defeated last time?
No.
Jeff Myers, head of Health and Human Services in the state.
Oh,
Yes.
he's a flighty buzzard.
Right.
Oh,
And you just spoke about Pennacook Street when you talked about Manchester. That's the abortion facility. Well, just 2 days ago at St. Marie's Catholic Church, they had a kickoff for the 40 Days of Life. The 40 Days of Life happens twice a year, and for 40 days is a concentration of praying outside abortion clinics. So 2 nights ago was the kickoff speech for people to go to Pennacook Street. So I was at Pennacook Street today for a while, praying and holding my sign, and other people were trying to talk to women that were going in for abortions and trying to hand them out, material. And so here we start off at the Catholic Church, which is supposed to have the same philosophy as the Catholic Hospital. Who is in there doing the abortions? A Dartmouth Hitchcock doctor. So this is an entirely schizophrenic setup we've got. Here is another.
well, how do you know it was a Dartmouth Hitchcock doctor?
We've got the papers right here. We have her name from the website, and she's from.
So could this abortion clinic just be basically a satellite for CMC, so that somebody comes into CMC and they get maybe abortion is recommended and they go over here and actually have the procedure done?
It's very possible. In fact, they've
Because the paperwork says it won't be performed within
right.
this parameter.
And, and the people that wrote this combination agreement have thought of that. They actually have come up with a notice so big that is going to be in waiting rooms for patients in case they have questions as to whether their referrals are within Catholic moral thinking and who to call if they have questions. So they know that this is going to happen. It's absolutely schizophrenic.
Wow.
And here's the, you heard the testimony on the assisted suicide bill.
Yes.
Okay, here's a list of all the groups that are against it. Not only the diocese, but CMC is against it.
Right.
And here's the page from the combination agreement that says that if it ever becomes legal, we can't stop the other parts of the system from engaging.
Right.
So the Catholic lobbyist is up there on one side.
Does anybody, did people that write these agreements ever actually read the Bible? Because there is actually a page in the Bible, chapter in the Bible, not chapter, but a verse that says specifically, don't be unevenly yoked,
I like that.
right? So you're not supposed to engage in a business that is compromising your moral. If you're in such a business, you should get out.
Did your committee hear House Bill 1675, the Baby Born Alive bill? That if a baby is born
Yes,
alive,
yes. We heard a lot of bills, abortion bills, and the Born Alive Protection Act. We heard that too.
well, that's a good bill.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to apply to many babies, but every once in a while someone does survive, and then they live to talk about it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The viewers should know that too.
Okay.
If you watched in the last few years, one of the things the Democrat candidates all have in common is they all, I believe, every single one of them believes in late-term abortion. And if you watch the news I forget what, I think it was last year, New York State had a giant celebration. They actually, I think, flooded some of the buildings in downtown in New York City with pink lights to celebrate a bill to allow late-term abortions in New York, even up to and including after birth. And most people in the country were pretty not only aghast at the fact that that bill went through, but that they were celebrating the killing
Yeah.
of children after birth. And down south, it was the governor of Virginia
Yes.
was on TV talking about, yeah, well, after the child's born, well, we'll keep it comfortable while we decide whether or not it should live. And most people are really offended by that, and we're offended around the country. I was talking to constituents. I said, well, you should be, when you get outraged about New York and Virginia, you should be aware that that is already the law in New Hampshire.
Yes.
It has been forever. And you and Barb and a whole bunch of other people have been fighting against it for 20 years.
But we got the blue sheet. Now, you could explain better than me what the blue sheet is.
Okay, so the blue sheet, when you go, and I encourage, I don't care what side of an issue you are on, I encourage all the viewers to go to the State House. You can go online to the New Hampshire General Court, look at the calendar, look at bills you're interested in, just go in and just watch a proceeding. And if you're watching a proceeding and it's, if you're like me and it's an anti-Second Amendment bill, you can just go into the room and listen, and there's a blue sheet, and you can sign your name and say, I'm opposed.
It looks like this, only it's blue.
Yeah, it looks like that except blue. And so that the committee knows how many people came in to oppose and or in favor of.
Yep, thank you, Gary. So we got copies of the blue sheet of the baby born alive bill
Yeah.
for a baby that might survive, that he would be given some kind of care.
Right.
And I've got 5 pages here of signatures, pro and con. And so there are several that have MDs after their name, and they're all against the bill. They all want the baby to die.
Yes.
So
We heard a lot of MDs telling us how,
and then one identified himself as a medical student from Lebanon.
yeah,
You know where that is.
yeah.
So I Googled the names of the MDs. Guess where they're from?
Love it.
Dartmouth, Hitchcock. And so these are the very same people that are going to be practicing throughout the southern tier,
Yeah,
including within the walls. And so just because they can't perform within the walls, who's going to know what they're doing elsewhere, where they're sending people elsewhere,
yeah.
or if they're going to have to move the department out so they can do their dirty work inside? We're very much afraid of this. This is a complete sellout of our Catholic ideals as far as we're concerned.
Well, it is a sellout because in very real term, many years ago, if a woman got pregnant, it was considered a blessing, and now in the new liberalism, it's considered a curse. So if it's a curse, why not get rid of it?
Exactly. And the fact that they've come up with notices to put in waiting rooms in case people are given immoral information, that there's somebody they can call to see if it really is,
Right.
because so they know it's going to happen. It is, I think it's outrageous.
Right.
And we have met with the Attorney General, and we're asking people that want to see CMC survive as a pro-life hospital,
Right.
and against,
Now, who fought back last time to prevent this? Was it, well, you said who it was, but was it a lawsuit to prevent the merger, or?
no, the Attorney General, by virtual of having a charitable trust division, has the job to protect the people because it's a charity, it's a charitable trust. It's
Right.
not owned by somebody. The immigrants to New Hampshire probably mostly French Canadians, put nickels and dimes to make Notre Dame Hospital on the west side.
Right.
And then there were two hospitals that merged to make CMC. But the first one, Notre Dame, was made with the nickels and dimes of people, not officials of any
Right.
kind.
Yeah. It wasn't a
And
big
so-
investment firm.
No, and so it had a mission, and it had a mission to uphold Catholic teaching. And in those days, abortion wasn't legal, but a Catholic teaching was against abortion, of course, and
Right.
it's against suicide. It's against assisted suicide. It's against removing someone's breathing or whatever tubes, and so that mission has to be protected under law. And so the Charitable Trust Division does that. And right now, the director, Gordon MacDonald, AG, and the director of Charitable Trust are working on this and trying to get through hundreds and hundreds of pages submitted by Dartmouth Hitchcock and the diocese, plus all the stuff the pro-life people are sending him. And we're asking people, please, if you could contact the Attorney General. You just go to the New Hampshire Department of Justice.gov, DOJ.gov. It's just Google New Hampshire Attorney General, you can get it, and say, please don't allow this because it will violate the mission. And it's all about mission, mission, mission. And then after it's reviewed by the Charitable Trust Division, there's an antitrust division that's also going to have to review it, because it's possible it would affect other hospitals in the Southern Tier very badly. I don't know what it would do to Elliott. I don't know what it would do to Southern New Hampshire. I have no idea. But these hospitals are probably also petitioning, I would imagine, the AG from the antitrust and the monopoly view.
Is St. Joe's still Catholic, right?
Yes, it is. Yep. And Mass General has come in and paired with Southern New Hampshire, which used to be Memorial down in Nashua.
Yeah.
And Dartmouth says in their statements that they're feeling threatened. They want to come in and take over, and they will be doing, as you said, not just things that are
Can I
against.
ask, I know that I'm ignorant to this, so why can't they just build another hospital?
I don't think Dartmouth wants to do that because there's Elliott and there's CMC right here,
Right.
and I don't know if they would get permissions or whatever they have to do that. It's much easier and cheaper for them just take over. I mean, it's a wonderful facility.
Oh, I know it is, yeah.
And they need a hospital. And not only do they want the hospital for their medical students and to expand their research, and as I said, the kind of research is not the kind that we like.
Right.
I'm sure some of it is, but not from the pro-life view. And they can charge more, too. I'll give you an example. I'm from Nantucket, as you know.
I know.
Nantucket had a small hospital, and you couldn't visit because we had cats.
I know. She invited me to her house on Nantucket, but she's got cats.
And
So I really like to go, but I also like breathing. So
and it's very little, so you couldn't get. It's just a little. You couldn't get away from the cats.
no.
So anyway, Nantucket Cottage Hospital joined Mass General a few years ago, and it joined a teaching hospital which can charge more.
Okay.
And as soon as it did that, people without good insurance realized that all the tests, the ultrasounds, whatever, were cheaper on the Cape. So they get on a boat in the morning and they go to the Cape Cod and they have their blood tests, their x-rays, their ultrasounds, and then they come back later on in the day because the Nantucket Hospital was able to put up their prices. And if Dartmouth down here in Manchester, where they have all their offices down here, they can't charge as much because their hospital is too far away. It doesn't qualify. And even though Nantucket's over ocean, it's only 30 miles away, so
Right.
it qualifies. So there's some money in there too, and I don't really understand all the money part. That's not my.
Yeah,
My
I'm sure
specialty.
that has a lot more to do with this than anything else, too.
Well, we asked Dr. Pape in a meeting, why can't you join with a Catholic hospital? And he said they had two they looked at. One wouldn't work. And he said the other one was smaller than CMC, and they wanted CMC to kick in a few million. And he said, we didn't think we should have to do that. And I said, well, I would rather see CMC kick in a few million than lose
Lose its heart.
their soul.
Right, yeah.
So to speak.
No, it's not so to speak. It's actually legit. I mean, because the thing is, and this is probably, a little bit ridiculous to some people, but I believe it's true. There is a spiritual component to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that spiritual component, if you a business engages in something that is offensive to God, especially something that was built and dedicated to God,
Mm-hmm.
there are spiritual consequences.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to go well, even though somebody is obviously making money here. There are going to be consequences.
I'm sure there are. And in order for the bishop to,
It's no different than a woman who sells her body. You know what I mean? Because maybe she'll make some money, but she's going to lose her soul in the process.
there's a bunch of regulations that have to be met before a bishop is supposed to sign off. And they're called the Ethical and Religious Directives. And I think it's number 75 or 76. There's like 100 and something of these Catholic.
Hey, we only
And-
got five. The time's gone
and
away.
actually, anyone reading it, any regular person reading it would say, this abrogates so many of these directives. We don't see how anybody could read them and say it's okay. Anyway, I'm sorry, Gary, you're running out of time.
Yeah, we got to leave like in 2 seconds or two, so we're supposed to leave a few minutes early. So, exactly who people should get in touch with and how?
The Attorney General. You can email him. If you go on the Attorney General of New Hampshire's website, he has an email, and he's definitely taking comments. And on March 30th or the 31st, at Memorial High School, there's going to be a time hosted by the Attorney General for public comment. So the very end of March, in the late afternoon at Memorial High School, we'll get the word out
All right.
for people to come and comment.
Yeah, because the other part of this is because we had those transgender bills on my committee, and I've looked into it a lot. The transgender angle is huge too.
Dartmouth is very much.
I know that, and
yes.
so what you might not know is these young children are vulnerable. Okay, so they believe, whether they've been convinced, whether they're just emotionally unstable. Most teenagers have emotional problems. So they have emotional problems and somehow become convinced that they're a woman inside a man's body or vice versa. If left alone, if those children are left alone, something like, I don't remember the numbers perfectly, but like 90% of them work themselves out.
Yeah.
Okay? But that's not what's happening. What's happening is there's a lot of money to be made. So some of these children are being encouraged to go with what they believe,
Right.
which makes a lot of people money and makes parents confused and think they're doing something good for their child. But let me ask the audience this: if it was truly a girl trapped inside of a male body, and that was an actual thing, then it would stand to reason once that surgery took place, they would feel more comfortable in themselves and become like a normal person after that. or not, I shouldn't say normal, but a comfortable person, spiritually comfortable person. They do not. Their suicide rate is higher than those people who don't get the surgery. If it was a cure, then their cure rate is very, 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 very low, and a lot of them regret it years after the fact.
And the legislature just last year, as you know, passed a bill prohibiting any professional from trying to counsel a child into thinking that just, you'll outgrow it, we'll counsel you,
We'll work instead of working with the kid and working through it. They're not even allowed to talk about it.
They're not allowed to it.
We got to go. See you guys next week.
Okay.